So, I'm gonna take some time off the lives and whatnot, and try and do a few kind of, well, sort of cinematics. Oh, goodness. Cinematics. Some of us dreamed of being Spielbergs and grew up with Jaws and all that kind of stuff. So, obviously, I'm not gonna pull a Jaws pan zoom handheld right now, but you can always dream, right? Anyway, that's not what I'm here for. I wanted to talk about something. So, I wanted to talk about my Aunty Marion, my dear beloved aunt. She really is the best family a person could hope for, and look, she's been there for me through thick and thin in the last couple of years, and we've had our moments and stuff, and at the end of the day, I guess this is brought up because there's all that talk about, if you don't feel safe, if you're gonna be traumatized by seeing your family, don't do it or whatever. And it's like, maybe this isn't the age we live in, but where I'm from, there's a saying, and I was brought up with this by my aunt, not by my aunt, by my mum. Blood is thicker than water. I always just, that's not a, blood in, blood out. All these kind of Taylor Hackford type synonyms and things. And I just assume that that's how people are, but these people, I mean, for goodness sake, when I was coming through, we had crazy leftist radicals, but they were at the fringe, I kind of dabbled with them and stuff, and it was kind of, counterculture and kind of cool, and, for 15-year-old getting drunk with a bunch of socialists and stuff after some commie meeting or whatever, standing on the corner of Swanston Street selling socialist worker party rags and stuff and pins and shit, smoking durries in my school uniform and shit, They were different times, and even then I didn't stick around for very long, What I mean to say is, look, my Aunt Marion, she came through, she's a generation ahead of me. Pretty much, look, my dad was 26 when I was born, so 31. 31 when I was born. So she would have been 25. And when she was young, I think I spoke about this some other time, but she went to Russia. She went to the Soviet Union, I believe in 1979. Did the full, she wasn't a schoolgirl, but she was a chaperone for a bunch of McRobertson girls. And if anyone's from Melbourne, you know what a fucking McRobertson girl's like, don't you? Yes, indeed. She was given the full treatment of late Soviet empire glory and all that kind of stuff. She's always been very much into the liberation narrative all the time, on the cutting edge of the politically correct, all these things. She's a school teacher. She works with, English as a second language students from all over the world, and she's got a beautiful heart. And her heart's in the right place. But, she's very much... In Australia, we have the ABC people. We have the age readers. Those kind of people. And she is what that is, if you know what that is. Liberal. But also high blood pressure. high blood pressure and maybe ADHD, something. Very like, look, autism runs in my family. And look, she's not diagnosed or anything, and I'm not TikTok diagnosing her and stuff. But like, when you've got a person where it's like, I have a text messaging with her about something, and then I call her, and the first thing she says when she picks up the phone is like, continues the SMS conversation. Is that weird? I don't know. I kind of find it a bit funny. Like, not as in like, hey, how you going? What's going on with this? She'll just be like, so are you picking up the dog? How's the dog going? Etc. You know, it can be really hilarious at times, and I love her. Like, one of the games I play with her, when she needs to get off the phone, or she's like, well, I gotta do my dinner, gotta do some shopping, blah blah blah. I used to play this game to see how much longer I could keep her on the telephone after she'd said that. Like, I just changed the subject and keep talking. But again, that's not the topic of this conversation. It's politics. Well, what I mean to say is, you know, through everything, we do clash on politics. And for no other reason is because, you know, we're different people. We have different perspectives. We listen to different things. We have different, responsibilities, priorities, all these kinds of things. So I don't begrudge her, but what I do begrudge her is she doesn't look. Maybe that's the paradox of this whole like agree to disagree culture. It doesn't matter how convincing you feel your arguments are. You ain't turning nobody these days. You know what I mean? Like, they need to stay in their safe spaces, and believe their narratives and all these kinds of things. And it's sad, but what I mean to say is, look, we've been speaking about the election on and off since, goodness, July, August. And it's been up and down. I got really, really pissed off at her when she was like, you know, it's not crazy that Trump should get shot, you know, should have a second assassination attempt. You know, blood in, blood out, whatever. And I got so pissed off. But then, like, you know, I gave her a serve. But then the same week, that whole Hezbollah beeper attack happened, and I just totally trolled her, and she never replied, and I ended up sending her a message saying no hard feelings like 3 weeks later or whatever. But basically, to begin with, so after our initial conversation of her saying, wouldn't it be great if Kamala Harris became, you know, female president and whatever, and, you know, I was like, well, do some research and get back to me on that. She never really did, and I sent her stuff, and she was always like, oh, you got to get the other side, and blah, 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 and like, she doesn't understand, like, she's the one who doesn't get both sides, you know, and when I bring her hard fact, she's all like, well, how about the other side, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, did you know my side? So what are you, you know, and basically we put a $20 wager on the election. Obviously I won, and she didn't hold it against me because the stock market rallied afterwards. So she's like, oh, well, I'll put the money in your bank, and, you know, no bad. But again, continuing with this narrative that she's getting from the mainstream media. And look, in Australia, the mainstream media is even less accountable. to be honest. We have one legitimate news service. Well, no. One legitimate terrestrial television news service, I think, Sky News. And that's about it. You know, Channel 9 can sometimes be rational, but they're a bunch of fucking smut peddling pimps. Fucking reality television smut peddling pimps, you know, as far as I'm concerned. As far as Channel 10, Channel 7, you know, before we had that fucking crazy storm through a couple of months ago, our Channel 7, I saw on YouTube, Channel 7 was like, the forecast ahead for the week, sunny skies, 27 degrees or whatever, 70 degrees, blue skies, t-shirt weather, and it's like, wow, just wow. That basically says it all. Anyway, so look, last time I spoke to her, I thought things were on pretty good terms. And when I called her this evening, I was kind of trolling her. I was like, oh, so how's your Trump bump going? You know, how's your Trump bonus, your election bonus going? And she's like, oh, she didn't get it. She's like, oh, I gave you the money, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, your stock, your shares, woman. And she's like, oh, it went up like 2%, and then, it rallied, and then it dropped, and now it's back to, deficit or whatever, in the black or whatever, like positive space, how you say, in a credit state or whatever. And I kind of teased her about it, and she's like, oh, well, it's not just Trump, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, what would the stock market have done if Kamala had gotten in, Anyway, she was very, very adamant that it had nothing to do with Trump, and, rallies happen with whatever, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, anyway. And of course, when I get on a track of mind, I wanna follow that bitch straight to the beach or whatever, and, kind of plowed in pretty hard, and, basically, she came up with this kind of rubbish stuff like, Trump only puts in people who agree with him and they're old friends and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And, like, in Australia, that low information citizen is, well, with American, it's like there is no limit to it. Like, if you just watch Channel 7, Channel 9, whatever, nobody's heard. She hadn't heard of Tulsi Gabbard. She hadn't heard of RFK Jr. And, all these things. And it's, like, sad because, we're talking over each other and she doesn't want to hear it and all this stuff. And in the end, she was like, look, I've had COVID. And I can't shake this whatever, and I need to watch my health, and I can't get upset, and blah, 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 blah. So I deflated, apologized, very polite, all these things, and then fucking talked about the cats and what I'm having for dinner, and, got a potato out of the garden, and, got on with being family, And isn't that what family's for? Like, if you can't disagree with your family and still love them and still live with them, then who will you? I mean, honestly, like, I don't understand this mentality of, like, living for a world that ought to be. You know what I mean? Like, I ought to live in a world where everybody agrees with me, Like, darling, that's not, like, I've always been very realistic about these things. You accept the world as it is. Know what I'm saying? Not as it should be. And then you get along with your work. You get along as best you can. You let the universe, you let the world guide you through what your life is. That's how I live my life. And people butt heads, people come up against each other, you meet people who won't want anything to do with you or whatever. Or they'll just rub you up and down and bloody blow smoke up your ass. But whatever. So, that's what I want to say. But another thing I wanted to say was, it's like, she's all like, I don't want to upset myself. Don't you? You know, you're upsetting me. Blah 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 blah. And it's like, if I was like, I don't understand how being told that Trump is not as bad as you've been told he is going to upset her. You know, wouldn't that be placating her? Just being like, oh, you know. And of course, she's always questioning my sources. But and I forgot to tell her, you know, most of my information comes from, you know, ethnic, you know, people of color, YouTubers and things. But that didn't seem to be much point. But it's like, for her to stay healthy and stuff, she can't hear it. She gotta, you know, it's like you can't tear off the Band-Aid just like that. You've got to like slowly edge it off or something, you know. And it's unfortunate. And in the end, I was like, you know, we talked for maybe an hour, 45 minutes, something like that. And then I was just like, look, I'll watch my hubris. I'll watch my hubris. And you know, play lightly and stuff, and it's fine. And I mean, hopefully when she's in better health and it's not such an issue, maybe we can scrap it out harder. But you know, I guess that's why I was never a great debater. I don't know. Like, I am very much changed my mind. But at the same time, you can't have a change my mind mentality. There's no point. Like, left-wingers can't have a change my mind mentality because they'll just end up melting down, you know? And maybe it's the same with the right. Look, I don't know. Like, during the election, to be honest, I got swept away in the Harris campaign. It's fucking big money, man. $1 billion for a campaign. Of course I'm going to question my integrity when I see all this bluster and pomp and circumstance, you know. That's the whole point. But luckily, you know, not everybody's like me, you know. Well, at the same time, it's like, no, that's interesting because, you know, honestly, if you look at my streams during the election, there really were times where I questioned my loyalties, you know. When I watched that HBO documentary about Trump and the 2020 election, it really put me in a kind of funk, you know, just because I was all in by that point. But, and I chilled out, you know. I did something else at the time. I was covering Israel and all that stuff as well. You know, like, I've never been, you know, this year has just been a conflagration, you know, and maybe that's what's made it so goddamn magical. Any hoodles, I love you, Aunty Marion, and to all those people who have family like me, who are just like, you know, to all of those out there who get along with their other halves, their better halves, their families, you know, their disagreements. My mum and dad never agreed with politics. Didn't stop them from hating each other. Did it? Or my dad loving my mum. You know, my dad was always very, very progressive because he was in the IT industry. Of course he was progressive. You know, he lived through the 80s. I won't even go into what kind of nonsense he was dealing with back in the day, in those early days. You know, that's another video, but, yeah, look, blood in, blood out, and blood is thicker than water. Blood is thicker than water, yo. So, I really, really, really hope that these divisive people who would really, really, really love to see the American, public torn apart, divided family to family, all this kind of shit. But end of the day, you can't let it happen. We gotta lead with our hearts, you know. And clearly, President Trump is leading with his heart, and we need to do the same. Enough of the mockery. You know, we need to sit down and recognize that we are, at the end of the day, we are all Americans. You know. And if you're not an American, well, go somewhere else and maybe at some point you will realize that you were an American all along. I'm not to say, but, you know, this is not a time for division anymore. You know, we live by census, we get on with our lives, we try to make something of our time on this earth. You know, don't we? So yeah, that's all I'll say for the minute. Keep it at a nice sitcom type schnitzel. So yeah, thank you for watching. That was just my little sneeze. And at least I've got my slave, so I can bop some tunes on these pre-records and whatnot. Get a bit of cinematic. Thank you. Cheerio.